Hey, sports fans, it's Larry Eder with your favorite program, Run Blog Run. And today we're featuring Steph Davis. She's the Mueller British Olympic Trials Marathon Champion. And that just happened, oh my gosh, less than 2 weeks ago. So congratulations, Steph.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
And thank you for, it's rather late where you are right now. So thank you again for giving us a little time at the end of your day. But I'm fascinated about you. Getting to watch the marathon, first of all, was a lot of fun. And we want to take you through a little bit with that. But I want our readers to learn a little bit about how you got into the marathon. You were a club runner, correct? And
Yes.
you decided to run a marathon? Is that how you began?
So I've always, in the marathon story, yes, I did my first marathon in 2018, and I did Berlin Marathon. And I purely entered that because my other half and some friends for the club were putting their names into the ballot. So I thought, why not? I'll give it a go. I probably won't get a slot anyway. Berlin's so popular.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I did get a slot. And so did some of my close friends. So then I thought, well, I may as well. I could end up going to support and standing on the side, cheering. So why not give it a go? And I'd always done a bit of running since I was young. From school age, I went to different types of sports. I did tennis, dancing, swimming, athletics, hockey. Mm-hmm. So I'd always been very active, but never followed a specific run plan. Was created just for me, and it broke down various different type of sessions. And I guess, I had like a daily plan. I just kind of dipped in and out and wanted always to be kind of fit and healthy, and was quite competitive in myself. But it wasn't until I started training for my first marathon where I then followed a kind of more rigid plan. And I guess kind of the success kind of, and how strong I was across that distance kind of showed. So yeah, it's been exciting, and I absolutely love the marathon. I love the training and everything with it. It's it's been a great journey, and I've learned so much as well in the last 3 years from following those plans.
What was your first marathon? What kind of
time? I did Berlin, and I ran 2:41.
Oh, wow. Okay. Had you raced 10Ks at that time or 5Ks at that time?
Yeah, so again, like from university, I'd done a lot of cross country and some road races, and done some 5Ks, some 10Ks. I'd done only one half marathon, and that was part of, two half marathons actually, and that was part of my training for the full marathon, because obviously it was something that was important for me to do, and in the build up to that race, and get more experience. So yeah, I was kind of thrown in at the deep end, doing a couple of halves, and then before the big marathon itself. But 5Ks and 10Ks were always something that I kind of dipped in and out of as when I was through university, and when I first moved to London around 9 years ago.
What was your PB at the 5K and 10K?
So when I started training for Berlin, I think I was running around 17:30.
Okay.
And then possibly just before Berlin or after, I can't remember the timeline, I dipped under 17 and ran 16:50. But I feel like 5K is now an area I kind of want to go back on and kind of work away at, because I've done some time trials and training within the past kind of year, because with COVID there's been no events to go to. So I'd like to go back and see what I could get for the 5K, particularly in a race environment. Mm-hmm. And same with the 10K. My best time for that is 33:21, but that was done, it must be about nearly 2 years ago now I ran that. So I haven't had a good shot at the 10K either for a long time.
What did you think after Berlin? Did you kind of go, hey, I kind of like this marathon distance?
Yeah, I did. I loved every part of the race, even towards the end when it was starting to hurt. I'm quite a kind of reserved runner. I always, and especially with the marathon, I've heard so many from other people's experiences to kind of beware of that kind of last 10K, 6 miles. You might hit the wall, it will really hurt. So for me, I just wanted Berlin to be a pleasurable experience. So I think I ran quite reserved. I was running alongside one of my club teammates from the club I'm with, is called Clapham Chasers, and we kind of ran together, which was really helpful. And then I did have to dig deep in that last 8K, 10K, but it was a completely different type of digging deep than you would get with a 5K or even a 10K. You don't get that kind of lactic build and burning feeling in your lungs. It's more like telling your legs to kind of keep going, don't slow down, keeping really focused. So I really, yeah. And then finishing the marathon was obviously just like I felt such a huge achievement because the whole thing just seemed to happen so quickly. From one minute I'd never planned to do a marathon, the next minute I was doing a full, more serious training plan for my first one. So I was just really glad that it went well and that my first experience was enjoyable, most of all. But I definitely think after Berlin that I realized I could have probably pushed on more. And there was definitely changes I could make to my training to kind of bring up the intensity and get that bit faster. For at that point, I love Berlin so much I then planned to do London the following spring.
And then, so London was your second marathon?
Yeah, it was.
And how did you do there?
So that was in April 2019. So it was around 5 months after Berlin. And I ran 2:32 in London.
Wow.
So it was, like a big PB for me, and something that probably was one of my most favorite marathons because it seemed like everything on that race day just clicked, and to run G2 was never something that I ever imagined I could do. My coach had obviously seen all my training and he knew that I was capable. But for me, I just was aiming to go right about 2:38, under 2:40 would just be amazing. So to run 2:32 was just, an absolute dream. And after Berlin, I had a bit of an injury with my hip. So that was quite stressful. And I mean, as every athlete knows with injuries, they're just really frustrating. And especially when all you want to do is train and get ready for the next event. But it was nothing serious. It just needed time. But it always kind of throws you off, and then you never maybe know how fit you are. You don't feel maybe as confident about your fitness. And then when I ran London and just felt so great, I think my last 5K of London Marathon was my quickest 5K throughout the whole race. And again, like being whole marathon, I had all my friends and family there, so the atmosphere was just incredible.
Who is your coach?
So my coach is called Phil Kissy. He's based here in London. So, well, pre-COVID, we had kind of a lot of hands-on coaching. He'd be there I'd see him a couple of times a week, and he'd be present at all my sessions.
Now, do you compete for a club?
Yeah, so the club I run for is called Clapham Chasers. So they're based in Southwest London. They're actually a triathlon club.
Okay.
But they have running as the kind of main component of the club.
Cool. So after your 2:32, what was your next marathon?
So my next marathon was then in the December 2019. And I went to Valencia. So I'd heard lots of great things about Valencia being a really fast and flat course.
Yeah.
And at this point, everyone was kind of talking about the Olympic standard and it being 2:29:30. And I guess with running 2:32, the kind of natural progression for me anyway was to see if I could dip under 2:30. And with that being so close to the Olympic qualifying time, the two seemed to kind of go together. So we kind of, again, got our heads down. I had some few weeks off after London to recover, and then worked on some speed during the summer and did a few races on the track, actually. So I did some 5 and 10Ks on the track that summer.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, I forgot about them actually, but they were on the track because they weren't road. So I did a 10K on the track. So there's a big event in London called the Night of the 10K PBs.
Yes,
so
I love that.
Yeah, it's a huge event, and especially for the spectators, the main thing is kind of the partying on the side of the track.
Yeah.
Obviously, as an athlete, that's not what my aim was that day. But no, that was an amazing race and just a really cool event to be part of. Unfortunately, I didn't have I ran about 33:04, but I had terrible stomach throughout the whole race. The race was in the evening, so it was it was around 9 p.m. Yeah, so it was a late one. I wasn't really used to that. And looking back, it's such an obvious error, but I had something that was a little bit spicy for my lunch. And yeah, that led I had to run around with a very sore tummy. But I was just so glad that I didn't drop out. I really wanted to dip under 33, and I was so close. So I know that next time I won't eat anything spicy beforehand, and hopefully I'll get my goal. So that was a fun event to be part of. And that, yeah, it was just nice to do something a little bit different before the marathon build again. And then we started and prepared for Valencia. So the kind of usual, we haven't changed too much from each marathon build. I mean, my coach, the main changes were from Berlin to London. And then we've kind of stuck with the same approach. My coach will kind of change sessions in that he'll maybe reduce recoveries to make it a bit harder, might add on a couple of extra reps. But largely my mileage and everything has been quite the same. I'm actually quite a low mileage marathon runner. I run on average about, for this build anyway, for Kew Gardens for the Olympic trials, my average mileage was 88 kilometers a week. So I think that's around 60 miles. So I supplement a lot of training with cross training. So that's something we've always done. I don't tend to do any double run days. I do typically do a cross train and a run rather than 2 runs in a day. And I just find that helps protect me, I guess, against some injuries and doesn't beat up my legs as much as running does with the impact, so that I can add more quality to my session. So that's kind of our approach, and we stuck with that for Valencia as well.
Cool.
Training for Valencia felt a bit up and down compared to London. I had generally I've never had any kind of major injuries, but had a few sessions I had to miss due to shin splints. But luckily, because I'm really into the cross training, I could always just step onto the elliptical and kind of crack on with workouts, even if I had to miss a running workout. So I think probably I still had the good fitness there, but kind of mentally you go in not knowing really what to expect because you know in your mind you've missed workouts. And then the 2 weeks before the race, I seemed to come down with the most awful cold. And I'm not a person that ever really gets, I've got a pretty good immune system. I never really get ill. But I think just winter months and probably caught something at work or on the tube. And it just didn't really seem to shift until about before the race. So we got out to Valencia early, and maybe the vitamin D and the warm weather and the sunshine helped me to fully recover. And I guess maybe having a kind of up and down build made me go into Valencia really relaxed. And I thought I'll just give it my best shot. I'll stick with there was a pacer for 2:29:30. So I just thought I'll stick with him and see what happens. And on the day, actually, the pacer ended up going too quick. So we crossed halfway in around 73:47. So we were more on for 2:27, 2:28 pace. And obviously I knew this was the case from the first kilometer to 5 kilometer in. I had my watch. It was telling me my 1K splits were a few seconds ahead of what we thought they'd be for that pace. But I just took a bit of a risk in how I was trusted myself. I kind of weighed up the scenario of either stick with this group and get pulled along hopefully by this pace, or I make a decision to drop off and go slower and run 2:29:30 with the risk then that I'm running out on my own. So I went with it, and I ended up running out an actually quite evenly split race. My second half was 5 or 10 seconds slower than my first. There wasn't really much in it. And came away again with another big PB of 2:27:40.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was right in the Olympic standard, and just in so much shock that I'd done it, because I didn't even know if sub 2:30 was possible before I went in. But it taught me just to keep a relaxed mindset, and sometimes you just got to trust yourself a bit and not overanalyze before you go into a race.
You were talking about cross training, and I'm fascinated because I really believe I'm a former coach in the U.S. juniors and then collegiate, and um, I really believe that core training and getting the kind of the pelvic girdle strong is really key to keeping injuries away. What kind of things do you do? You said you're doing elliptical. Do you swim? Do you bike?
Yeah, so pre-COVID, when gyms were open and we had free reign of all facilities,
Sure.
I typically swam twice a week. So Monday for me would always be a non-impact day. So I would do on that day a swim and some kind of easy cross train on the elliptical. And that could range, depending where I am in my training block, from kind of 30 minutes to 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would do another swim later in the week. And for me, the swimming, and you're right, like it is super good for your core because you're having to think about that position in the water. So that's the next. But for me, psychically, I think the swimming just really helps me feel relaxed, and it's quite a therapeutic exercise. So it's really good for recovery. I'm not going to the pool to become better at swimming.
Sure.
I think about my technique a lot, but I'm not trying to get faster, is what I mean.
Yeah.
It's just purely recovery. And then the cross training, I typically use the elliptical. And again, it's just to replace those kind of easy runs that maybe other runners would do. I would just do that on the cross trainer instead. When COVID hit and the gyms were closed, I didn't have an elliptical trainer at home, but I had an indoor turbo trainer.
Yeah.
So I replaced those ellipticals with the bike. So, and I was able to do some open water swimming when the lakes were open out here as well. So I got myself a wetsuit and got out to the lakes, which was really cool. That's been too cold to do over the winter here. But in May time, we'll start doing that again. Just having the non-impact exercise as part of your schedule. I think three things actually. It helps combat against injuries, I think, and just those little niggles that us runners, especially marathon runners, always kind of pick up on. I think, secondly, the running is all impact, it's an impact sport, and that takes a lot out of your muscles and your joints, and you need more time to recover from that. So if you need more time to recover for that, then maybe you don't have the same energy as you the next day to maybe put into your interval session. Mm-hmm. So if you've kind of reduced the impact, then you can add more quality to your interval sessions. And thirdly, if you then do get injured and need to take time out of running, then you're not having to change your whole routine and try and pick up a new discipline, a new sport to keep fit, because you've already been doing it. You'll just have to change your plan so you do more of it. But it then doesn't become such a chore, and us runners can find it quite traumatic when we can't run. So this way, it doesn't seem so much of a huge change to your routine.
What are your interval workouts like?
So I tend to do 2 main sessions a week, a kind of speed session. That was usually on the track, but with COVID, we did them all on the road because the tracks weren't available. Mm-hmm. And then I do a kind of tempo session, so longer reps. And then occasionally we'll add some marathon pace efforts as well to my Sunday long runs. So we'll stimulate kind of marathon pace effort. And depending on how much fatigue we're carrying in from the 2 sessions we've already done in the week, that marathon pace might be taken with a little bit pinch of salt, and we'll maybe go a little bit slower than what we target for on the day. And it's just about listening to that body, but still getting a good workout in.
Your long runs on Sundays, what do you kind of vary them, or what distances are you doing?
So they vary. This build actually for Q, I had to start a little bit later because I had an ITB injury from October to December. It just seemed to kind of linger.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot of training on the turbo trainer for that. And that actually, even though I was nearly 3 months off running, I thought I'd come back and be super unfit, but I was really surprised at how much fitness I'd actually gained from using the bike. So it meant our build for the trials was a little bit shorter than we planned. So it was just a case of kind of each week ramping it up a bit to get up to 23 miles. So I did kind of 1 23 miler, and then I did a couple of 22, and then most of my runs were like a 20 and then an 18, 16. So it was just kind of in that stepping stone up to the 23. And then we taper down the 3 weeks before.
Were you nervous before the Kew Gardens race?
So not as nervous as I thought I'd be. I think if the race had been when it was originally planned, it was meant to take place in April 2020 at London Marathon. And I think I would have been a lot more nervous going into that event. I think I had more time to prepare myself mentally, to build some more self-confidence, to obviously train more. So I actually went into Kew quite relaxed. I mean, there was a big change to the lineup the week of the race. A lot of the top girls I thought that would be going weren't able to make it due to injury or other medical reasons. So that actually then put me as the fastest. And once that was announced, I kind of then switched off from any social media and just focused on myself and my own journey, so that I didn't need to feel any added pressure. And I think that was a really good thing for me to do, because it just meant I wasn't nervous going into the race. Yeah, I felt a lot more relaxed than I thought I was going to. And again, like maybe Valencia taught me that relaxed approach is better for me, and I kind of have any pre-race chats well in advance of the race rather than having lots of last minute pep talks and stuff from lots of different angles. I'm quite a good judgment of what I need to do. So I think my friends and family now know just to kind of let me get on with it, and then that means I'll run better.
Sure. What did your coach say to you? What advice did your coach provide for you before the race?
So he has always kind of gives me indications of what shape that he thinks I am in, without being too forceful about it, if that's the right word.
Sure.
Because he doesn't want me to feel any pressure. I was really lucky that I was able to have a +1 for Q, so I chose my coach to come in with me. And the pre-race plan was just to go out and stick with the pacer, that 2:28 pacer in that first group, for the first half of the race. And then he was there on the sidelines to kind of feed me instructions every lap. We were just going to see how the race unfolded and take it from there. We played through lots of different scenarios, and the final scenario of me having the lead that I had was never one that I had played through my mind.
Wow.
But yeah, I didn't. I thought that there were some really, really strong runners going into that race. So I was ready for, like, yeah, I guess like a big race at the end of the marathon. And yeah, so it just didn't happen, and was obviously great for me. But yeah, I honestly thought that there'd be 3 or 4 of us up there kind of fighting for those top 2 spots. And that was my only goal. I wasn't really thinking about a time, because I already had the qualifying time. I just needed to finish top 2. So that was my aim.
Your race looked pretty organic. I mean, I've watched it a couple times and just kind of taken some notes, which is what I do after watching the big races. You seem very within yourself the whole time. Can you kind of take us through how you felt during the race? How did you feel in the first 8 to 10 miles? Did it fit pretty well for you, or?
Yeah, it felt pretty good. About 2-3 miles in, I actually had a really bad stitch. So at that point, I was thinking, "Oh, great, this is not what I want to happen at the start." But I just kind of focused on other parts of my body that were feeling good. I was shouting at my coach to switch some of my drinks to water, because I was concerned about taking too much energy drinking and that upsetting my stomach. But equally, I wanted to be ready to take some fuel in so that I wouldn't tire. I mean, it's finding that balance. And my stomach seemed to settle, although it was always still kind of there, but it didn't. After that, kind of, it was maybe there for like a K or a mile, and then it kind of eased. But my running rhythm felt relaxed. I felt in control. I mean, the race was very quiet, so I had no idea how anybody else was doing behind me, but I just focused on the back of the pacer, and keeping my rhythm, ticking off the laps. And we crossed halfway in 74:05, which was pretty much bang on pace. The pacers were asked to go through in 74. And at that point, I was just again like listening to my coach's instructions. And I don't know if you saw from the coverage, but us group of girls were actually sitting around 4 meters, 5 meters off the back of the pacers at some points. And my coach was telling me to kind of push on, close the gap. But I was nervous of doing anything too early, especially in the first half, because you never know what could happen in a marathon. I didn't want to pay the price later on. So I made that decision just to kind of stick at the front of the group. And then I'm not entirely sure when the gap opened out and really I made a kind of breakaway. It wasn't an active decision. I think looking back on the coverage myself, we had to go into single file to let the men's race pass.
Yeah.
And I was at the front of the group because that's where it always had been. So naturally I went in behind the pacer and we all kind of came in one by one. And I think after that, when the group tried to come back together, we split into kind of a few smaller groups. And then it just seemed to kind of disperse from there. For me, I was just focused on, again, like the back of the pacer and ticking along. I wasn't actively looking at my watch to target a time. In every other marathon I've done, I've had kind of 5K splits written up my arm so that I'm aware of where I should be in order to hit that time. Whereas for this one, I didn't have that. It was actually quite refreshing to do a race, which was just a race. It wasn't me trying to get a PB. So yeah, I just sat in behind. Naturally, I think because the gap had maybe closed, so I was sitting right behind the pacer rather than them checking back and feeling they have got to drop back to let the group catch up. And I think sitting behind that pacer, he maybe eked on the pace a little bit because he could feel me behind. So we were at times running a bit quicker than kind of that 2:28 pace. And that kind of brought me to a negative split at the end. And my second half, I think, was in around 73:10. And I felt good. Like I was obviously having to kind of work in at the end. I mean, it's a marathon, but compared to how I felt, I guess, in Valencia, where I was really, really going for it at the end, and I was running in a group with a couple of other girls, so there was definitely maybe more fire in my belly as well to kind of stick with that group. Whereas for this one, I was just kind of glancing back to make sure I still had a bit of a lead. I still had that top two spots secured and focused on getting to that finish line. And it wasn't until I came around the kind of last 500 meters ish, and there was a big clock that I could then see, oh, actually, I'm on for a little bit of a PB here as well. So at that point, I really kind of went for it to get as much of a PB as I could from that point onwards.
When did you know that you had the race under control?
I never at one point thought I've got this. Like, part of me was like, hearing from other people on the course that I had a lead, but at no point did I know if that lead was how significant it was. I was glancing behind me and couldn't see anyone, so that was reassuring. But I didn't want to take at any point anything for granted, because you never know in a marathon if you're going to get cramped the next kilometer and then have to slow down or walk, or you're just going to hit a wall. And I didn't know how the other girls were holding up behind me, if they were going to come powering through, if they were starting to get stronger. So just, really focusing on making sure I couldn't see anyone else in my sights and keeping that gap. And then for the last lap, I kind of knew that I had it. I was, with 3K to go, I would have been probably surprised if someone had made a lead based on what I could see from behind, and what people were telling me that I had a big lead. But until I crossed that finish line, I wasn't going to take anything for granted. I was going to keep going and making sure I wasn't fading, and I was still being consistent with my pace.
Did you think that the Kew Gardens course is a fast course?
So there have been a lot of bad press, I think, for the course going into the race. I knew it was going to be very flat. I'd been to Kew to visit the gardens, and I knew it was a very
Sure.
flat area. Looking at the course map, I was probably a bit nervous about, and then hearing people talk about these sharp corners, but I was fortunate enough to go down to the course around 4 or 5 weeks before, just me and my coach, and we met Tom, and we did a course recce, and then I got to do a little jog around it, and my coach and I were both very happy with it. We didn't think it deserved the kind of press that maybe it had got about the corners, and I can understand why it did, because if you look at a printed map, the corners did look quite severe.
Mm-hmm.
But I was happy with the course. The one thing I was nervous about going into the race was how wide the paths were, because at most of it, they were only kind of 3 meters wide. And when the lineup was going to be 30 runners, that could have been quite crowded at parts. But the week of the race, when half the field had dropped out, I then wasn't so concerned about it, because I knew that probably the race would spread out, and even at the beginning be in smaller groups.
I would be remiss not to talk about running shoes, but I kind of think there's a lot of things in there. So I have a different approach to it, okay? But can I ask you what shoes that you ran in?
Yeah, of course. I was wearing the Nike Next %.
Okay, and have you run in those before?
Yeah, so I wore the Next %, exact same shoes, just different color, at Valencia.
Okay.
And at London I wore the 4%.
Okay. My take is that I believe 90% of it is the athlete and what you do. Okay, unlike a few other media people, the way that I equate good shoes is, when I was running back in my best for a 10 was about 31:09, and I ran it in a pair of Air Mariahs. This is back in 1980. It was the first Air shoe, and I remember going from my track spikes, which were wonderful, to these shoes, and running 5-minute pace in them was glorious. It was like being on pillows, right? But I had to work really hard to be able to run that thing, and I don't want to take anything away from your performance, and I think there's been way too much done on the shoes, although I do think there needs to be some rules. Do you think the shoes have helped you a little bit? Are you comfortable in them?
I actually think they've really helped me from an injury prevention point of view.
Okay, that's cool.
I train in them only for some of my speed sessions. I don't wear them really on the track, but I wear them typically for some marathon pace stuff or some tempo stuff. And I think they definitely help protect my shins.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think on that respect, they're great. I mean, I also completely agree with what you're saying, that the athlete needs to put in the work. You can't just put on a pair of shoes and expect to break world records or qualify for an Olympics.
Yeah.
If you look at the number of, the other brands have all started to catch up now. I mean, that's ASICS just released their latest pair.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the girls sponsored by ASICS were already running in prototypes before these were released. Adidas shoes, I mean, I've worn the Adidas. I work quite a lot in training, actually, and it's also, I would say it's exact same as the Nike for me and how it feels.
Sure.
So in that respect, it's quite a level playing field now. They're available for all athletes, all brands. Doesn't matter if you're a Nike athlete. If you're an Adidas, you now have the opportunity to wear it. If your brand doesn't do a carbon shoe and you feel like you need one, then you have to review that with whoever you're sponsored by.
Sure.
But there was girls in the marathon that I just did that didn't run to their best, and I know they didn't run to their best because I know them as people and I know what they're capable of, and they were wearing the shoes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean having those shoes, you can still have a bad day.
Sure. That makes sense.
So I think, there is a lot of press about the shoes, and I mean, I think part of it is quite sad as well. Like, I don't know if you saw the weekend there, Beth Potter.
Yes, we just did a piece on Beth last night, and I thought that was very poorly done and poorly handled.
Yeah. Really, taking away from her amazing training and her amazing performance. And that's probably because these ASICS shoes are brand new and no one's really ran in them yet in a big race.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was, I think the shoes do help, but I think, the athletes, we really need to train really, really hard.
What shoes do you use for your easy sessions?
So for my easy runs, I wear the Nike Zoom Fly 3.
Yeah.
Have a carbon plate in it, but it's a lot more sturdy compared to like the Next Percents.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have I have a few pairs of Hokas as well that I've tried,
Yeah.
not carbon plated. And
Nice shoes.
I quite like the Hokas are nice. And then I like also as well for easy runs the Infinity Reacts.
Yeah,
Well.
I think that I always told my athletes to have at least 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. And I like your idea of when you do the fast stuff. When you do the fast stuff, if you're in the shoe that you're going to race in, you're not going to have any problems with that shoe because you're kind of taking it through. When you do your long runs, what shoe do you do it in?
So I do my long runs in the Zoom Fly 3. And again, because I've had shin splints in the past and having that kind of little carbon plate in it, I think has helped my shins, to be honest. And then for maybe short and easy runs, I just wear kind of sometimes the Hoka Rinkins or the Nike Zoom Fly 3s. And then on the track as well, I've tried a few different types of shoes. I've tried the Hoka Rocket X as well as the Asics. Is it the Meta Racer?
Sure.
So there's a few shoes there as well. But I've been fortunate enough to try quite a few brands recently, just because I've been gifted different shoes. And it's interesting to compare them. But you naturally find what you find most comfortable and what you prefer.
Yeah, no, that's the key. I think that's the most. I tell people to try 5 or 6 brands, do it at the end of the day, take a couple pair of clean socks and go out and run around the neighborhood. And if the running store doesn't let you do that, then go to a different running store, and it's just you've run, this is in the US, I would call this a Cinderella story, Steph, and you've had a wonderful progression, and it's really fascinating to learn about it. The other day with our British, our European correspondent, that I think you're capable of a 2:22. Does that scare you? That fast?
Yeah. I would love to run 2:22. It would definitely be a big dream of mine. I would just love to do another race, and I don't know if the Olympics will be this one, depending on the course and the terrain. Sure. How hilly it is and the conditions of how hot and humid it will be. But I really, after doing the trials, it kind of put some fire in my belly to do another marathon where I'm racing against other kind of female competitors and really can give a good chance to kind of push myself to see what time that I could get, hoping that it's everything falls into place on the day and it's a good day for me. But I definitely think, I think there was more in the tank in the race at Kew, and I'm excited to see where training can go.
Well, you've survived 40 minutes with me today, Steph. See, it wasn't that painful. And even dealing with an American too, you've done great. But no, I really enjoyed your race. I thought you did everything right. You stayed in control. Congratulations to you and your coach and your support group. It was really fun to watch, and the drones kind of showing you all the athletes, and then also being able to see you as you made your moves. You looked so relaxed during the race. My last question is, how was that win inspiring you? Have you been able to come down and go, God, I'm actually the British Olympic trials champion?
Yeah, sometimes I do find myself being like, oh my goodness, I did it. Like, it's still not fully sunk in. And I think it was starting to maybe kind of sink in a bit, and then the excitement built again when they released the full team last Thursday. And so it's been a bit of a kind of roller coaster in a great way. And the support has just been so lovely and overwhelming. Like, I wish I could reply to everyone. But my focus now is I've never taken a recovery more seriously as I have now, just because I really want my build to go well and for me to be injury-free and healthy for the training to make sure I'm on that plane to Japan.
Well, we look forward to seeing you in Japan, and thank you so much, Steph. I really appreciate it for your time today. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. Our program is Socially the Distance, and we featured Steph Davis, who's the Mueller British Olympic Trials Marathon champion. I hope you never get tired of hearing that. But Stephanie, thank you again for your time today. This has been lovely, and I look forward to see. I hope to get to see you. I go to the Highgate 10K most years. I missed it in 19, and obviously they've had to cancel the last couple.
It's been cancelled, yeah.
But next year, when everything comes back, before the Commonwealth and the Europeans and the World Championships and everything, we'll be able to see that one too. But good luck in Tokyo. I hope to see you there. And thank you again.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks so much.
All right. This is Larry Eder, RunBlogRun, Socially the Distance. We were with Steph Davis, the Mueller British Olympic Trials Marathon Champion. Thanks again for watching us today. Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. This is your favorite program, Socialing the Distance. And this week we feature Steph Davis. Steph is the 2021 Mueller British Olympic Trials Marathon Champion. She did that on the 26th of March on a fascinating course. It was a 12 lap of 3.33 kilometers and 1 lap of 1.66 kilometers held in the botanical garden called the Kew Gardens. It's one of the royal properties in London. And the event was managed by Tom Bedford, Jade Bedford, and David Bedford and their team for about 11 women and about 17 men. And Steph Davis took the women's win in a PB 2:27.16. And we got to spend some time with her today. She's delightful. She has been a runner pretty much into about 2008. Obviously, very fit. Her first marathon, kind of on a lark, she ran 2 hours, 40 minutes. Think about that for men and women. Pretty darn impressive. Her second, and that was in Berlin in 2018. And then she ran the Berlin, or after that, she ran London and ran a 2:32. That was in 2019. I asked her about 10Ks, 5Ks and stuff at the time, and she'd run about 17:30 before the 2:40, and about she ran 33:20 right after that. So she had some pretty good leg speed, and her coach Phil Kissy with the Clapham Chasers obviously has done a very fine job. Low mileage, fascinating, 60 miles a week, so about 88K. And she has a long session, and does a lot of cross training, elliptical, swimming a couple sessions a week, a bike on the turbo cycle thing. I'm not totally familiar with that, and you guys will laugh about it, but that is life. But she is obviously quite talented. In her third marathon in Valencia, she really got to it and ran a 2:27.40. That was in December of 2019, before everything got tough. And but she, I think that was a really good experience for her, because I think what it did, it helped her run a tough race. And she had said in London, it was totally exciting. She ran her fastest 5K as her last 5K. Well, in Valencia, she learned how to race, and she had people with her that whole time. The race in Kew Gardens was interesting. Some of the top women athletes had pulled out. That should not take away at all from her performance, because I'm not sure anybody could have beat her that day. She was on. And if you watch the race, you'll see she negative splitted, went through the half about 74.04 and came back in 73.12. Pretty impressive. And I thought she looked great that second half. She said, Steph told us that she really didn't believe that that anybody could really catch her with the last lap. But up till then, she was waiting for people to come up, and you have to be like that. But I teased her a little bit, said I think she can do a 2:22, and she smiled. She said she liked to run faster. I think she can run much faster. If you look at her development, what it tells you is she's found a system that works with this low mileage, but it's also about the cross training, getting getting the core, getting your hip girdle strong, Also giving your body breaks, your feet breaks from stuff. She's had a couple injuries, ITB and a couple other things. But I think she also moves shoes around. She's racing in the Nike things, some of the new Nike product. She's in Hoka, she's in Asics, she's in Adi. And the variety of shoes I think is healthy for her feet, good foot hygiene, and we don't talk enough about that, but a variety of shoes make a lot of sense. She does her fast sessions in the shoe she races in. Very old school, but very important. I don't understand why people put on brand new shoes to race, because there are little things that can happen, and why jeopardize 5 or 6 months of because you put on a new pair of shoes and get a strange blister. Just not shouldn't be done that way. But I think she's got a good crew around her, and Steph's got a good head on her shoulders. We're going to see her race well. I hope to see her race well in Tokyo, which is her first Olympic marathon in a whole different world. These are very tactical races. They can be very fast. The pro's going to be warm, and the pandemic's going to complicate things too. So we wish her the very best at her first Olympic visit, and she is now a British Olympian, which is something she should be very proud of. But she was a lot of fun to interview, and thank you to Tom Bedford for getting this together. Thanks to Mike Deering for producing Socialing the Distance, and this is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun, our epilogue. We featured Steph Davis, who is the Mueller British Olympic Trials Marathon Champion 2012. If you like RunBlogRun, like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you love us, subscribe on the YouTube. Stay safe, wear your mask indoors, wear your mask outdoors if you need to. But I want to see you at a track meet healthy. Talk to you soon.